The following is a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman.
Keep your mind, your mission on your mind. My mind right now is on Michael Coleman is the CEO of the Heart of Alabama Food Bank. They do wonderful work down there covering 35 counties. And this is more than just about food banking. We have a show for that called Bite by Bite, which you can hear next 10:30 every Monday through Friday on the TKR app. Mission Minded here at 10 o'clock Central Time every Monday through Friday, wherever you get your favorite podcast. And now on the brand new Tony Curry Radio YouTube channel, you're watching our two beautiful faces made for television this morning here. So check us out. We got a bunch of emails to get into, and I kind of gave you an idea where we're going, and they're all over the place. We love emails, man. info@TonyCurryRadio.net, info@TonyCurryRadio.net. As we do this show on the 14th of September, the big three will strike tonight at midnight. I don't see where this is not going to happen. And Joe in Huntsville said, I'm so sick of strikes. Ultimately, I believe the consumer pays the price. I need to buy a car. Should I buy a car now or wait? Your thoughts on what we're going to probably see later on tonight. This could be one of the largest strikes we've had in U.S. history.
Yeah, and it's never good for business. It's never good for the consumer. Again, I've touched on strikes, my feelings on it. You can look at both sides, and if you just hear their individual arguments in a vacuum, they're both going to be very logical. But when it comes down to it, typically employees are asking for a certain amount of benefits. Whatever they're asking for, you can bet it's going to cost the company money, more time off, whatever it is. It's going to, and so the company is coming back and saying, as any company is going to do, is like, we got to be able to make a profit.
Mm-hmm.
We're a publicly traded company. We have to answer to shareholders. And so can we give you what you want and still charge enough for our product? Does our product have enough demand out there to be able to recoup what we're projecting that we're going to give out to shareholders? And I think so many people know this now. Back when stocks and mutual funds were all kind of back in the 80s, you didn't know much about it. But now everybody who's got a 401k or a 403b or whatever it is, it's all invested in the stock market. And I guarantee you that my portfolio includes companies that are going to be affected by the strike.
Sure.
But so it's not just, we're going the fat cats don't want to give off money, but don't want to empty out their pockets. It's more complex than that. But again, depending on what the individual issues are, I understand the desire as an employee to get as much as you can for your own retirement and all that. But I'm telling you, it really pits to when you pit management versus your employees against each other. It's not like, we just come back to work and everything's fine.
Sure.
You know that there's some lingering challenges with that, resentment. It affects the work environment. And ultimately, there's going to be a little bit of give and take on both sides, and they'll end up somewhere. The question is, how long do they want to play the game? The only leverage they have, I get it, the workers have is, hey, we're not going to build the product. The flip side is, are you asking for something that's so unreasonable? We would have to charge $60,000 for a Ford Taurus, and I don't think they make Tauruses anymore. But it's so unrealistic. Your demands, and I've seen some like we want a 40% increase of salary over the next 3 years.
What they're asking for, and that's the amazing thing is, obviously, we're not talking about one. We're talking about all three of them going on strike at one time.
Right.
And I'm just a consumer. I don't know, but I know that across seas, the average worker in a car factory is making somewhere between $50 and $53. Here in the United States, they're making $63 to $67 an hour, which I was like, wow, is it too late for me to become an auto worker?
Yeah, well,
like, holy smokes, they want to work 32-hour weeks, and they want more benefits, and they want it now. They don't want it over 4 years. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that the companies came up as much as they did, as far as, because they're offering $10 to $12 more an hour. And I'm thinking to myself, we got people out there that are happy to get a 35-cent raise, and these guys are asking. So I don't know who to fight for, but obviously if they can do it, they're obviously making a lot more money than we know they do.
Well, and I will tell you, it's funny. I don't want to, because we have Hyundai is right here in Montgomery, and the impact on the economy, I'm telling you. So I come from a small town about an hour south here of Montgomery. And when Hyundai came in, it's not just the fact that they invested billions of dollars, but all of a sudden, all these little small towns, all these, in one little community, the company that makes all the exhaust come in, and then the one that makes all the fabrics and everything, and all these little plants start popping up in these small towns. And there are people who maybe don't have a formal education, but are hardworking, smart Americans that just want to go to work every day and provide for their families. These car companies are the lifeblood now. I mean, if Hyundai were to pull out, it would just devastate our economy and devastate so many families.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for us sometimes to wrap our mind around, how can you be making so much and still complain? I mean, to the point that you're willing to walk away. And because I will tell you something, you can bet you right now that Toyota, Honda, and Nissan and all those are saying, go ahead and strike, because we're going to fill that gap, and we're just going to get more market share. Because if people are forced, because there's shortages of Fords and Chevrolets, people might look, maybe for their first time, they've always said, I bought America, but I'm tired of this. And then once you buy a foreign model and you're like, hey, this is, I really like this. It drives great. It's very reliable. It's very dependable, which, almost all cars are now. But the problem is you may not get that customer loyalty back. But right now, it's all about that, fighting that issue.
What I don't understand, whether it's a baseball strike, an NFL strike, or a big three, strikes end. They just do, one way or another. And it's just like, why can't we make this end before we actually have to start walking out? The other thing I think is crazy is they're doing this thing called a standing or walking strike, where they're actually striking parts of the factory one at a time so that people can continue to work, but they can build an engine, but if there's no transmission for it, it's not going to go anywhere. So it doesn't really matter. Great question. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. Barb in Orville, Ohio, home of the Hostess Twinkie. What's Mike's take on the massive buyout of Smuckers, paying $5.6 billion for Hostess? Do you think it's good for competition? Do you think it's good when you see massive buyouts?
Well, again, I wish we get asked some of the best questions, and there's never an easy answer. There's never a yes or no. It's never a yes or no.
That's why I throw them to you.
Well, I will tell you, when I was in Birmingham recently, Smuckers is coming there, and just talking about the investment's $1.2 billion into a Birmingham plant, and all they're going to build are these peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I'm drawing a blank right now off the top of my head what they're called.
Uncrustables.
Uncrustables, that's right. Uncrustables, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I never even had one. And people say, man, these are like crack.
They're pretty good.
If you start eating them, yeah. And so I got some, and I'm like, hey, I get it. But I mean, $1.2 billion into making this. And they're doing that because obviously they're going to make money. So I think everything that I've heard, of course, they're going to tout the greatness of Smuckers. And I love when companies come in and bring jobs, and they're paying high. I mean, nobody at this plant was going to be making less than like $23 an hour on the lines to make. I mean, it was really phenomenal what they were. And especially in the South, where, $23 to stand there and make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches through an automated system is with the benefits and all that. It's pretty good deal. It all depends on how Hostess is financially. Hostess could be in trouble, or Hostess could not have been being run well. And in that case, Smuckers coming in and buying Hostess is good, because they're going to come in and bring their efficiencies. And it all depends on, do they grow the Hostess brand? Or are they trying to just come in and eliminate the competition? because you've seen that before where you're like, well, maybe we need another bakery division. So we're going to come in and look, we have 1,000, I'm just making this up, 1,000 hostess workers. But what we want to do, we're going to cut 500 and just keep 500 workers and do this for our company. Or they could be coming in and saying, hey, there's a lot of money to be made under this division. Here's our vision for it, how we're going to make it more efficient, but grow it. And so you bring in a new climate. It could be a healthier climate. So it's one of those time will tell as to how much it benefits the actual workers. But it's just part of the capitalistic society. Is companies are always looking to grow. Bigger companies eat up smaller companies. Not necessarily a negative thing, can be a negative, but lots of times it's just a case by case and seeing how it plays out.
You're watching Mission Minded here. Of course, you can hear on the TKR app every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. It's followed up by Bite by Bite, another special show that's brought to you by the Heart of Alabama Food Bank, HAFB.org. Check that out. It's wonderful. It's funny. I was going somewhere this morning. I wanted to get a quick bite to eat before I came back to the studio, and this restaurant I went to only took cash. And I was kind of like, this is really good. And of course, I had no cash on me. And I like having be able to spend cash or use credit card or use my Apple Pay or whatever it is. So Casey in Birmingham says that she uses the Square, which obviously went out. I guess it was last week or the week before. They had a massive outage and thousands of businesses lost thousands of dollars because they couldn't take any pay. And a lot of places, particularly like say Protective, they don't even take cash anymore. She goes, what's up with cash? Why don't people take more cash more often? And is this something where we're going to have the chip? I mean, it's in the Bible, right? We're going to have something in the middle of our forehead, or we're going to tap a table. That's the only way you can pay. She said, what is happening to cash?
I'm not a financial analyst. So I'm going to give it just from a layman's perspective in my own experience. We have donation platforms. And so, we very much thrive on electronic transfers. So people donate with credit cards. Every once in a while, people will send, $5 in the mail or something like that. We get, but the reality is, I don't know all the complexities of it and all the reasons, but one of the things that I do appreciate about having electronic, it's the same thing I learned when I was doing electronic bill payment. I resisted that. Randy Travis had a song back in the late 90s, I think, that, basically mocked people that paid their bills through their bank and online and all that. Yeah. And I totally got it at the time. But then when I was like, well, I paid my bill and somebody says, well, you didn't pay it. And I can go click on, I'm like, here's an electronic trail all the way till it was deposited or it wasn't. And I could see it very clearly and trace it. And I thought, wow, that's really a neat thing to have, because how many times have we put stuff in the mail or think we put stuff in the mail, not 100% sure, we don't know if it's cash, if it got stolen, we don't know. So
the check in the mail doesn't work anymore, by the way. The check in the mail line does not work anymore.
That's right. Well, you say it to millennials and Gen Zs right now. They don't even know what are you talking about?
Right.
What's a check?
Mm-hmm.
But so there are security issues and safeguard issues, although of course we know that there's no system that's been created that can't be disrupted and violated. But I have heard there's actually all of towns now that are talking about going 100% cashless. And so you get into some of those challenges like, and I come at it from this perspective of a poverty perspective. People in a poverty culture who don't have access to banks and don't have access to credit cards, turn to things typically. If they need loans, they go to these quick cash,
yep.
And things like that. They get taken advantage of. It's a brutal system.
Yeah, it is.
But then lots of times now they're getting into this cash. They have these cash apps that's tied into the bank a little bit,
mm-hmm.
And that's helping them. But lots of times, if you have that, you can't at retail places. You can't. They don't take every cash app, or they don't take a Venmo payment, or they don't do some of those things that are tied in. So I think as a society, businesses are having to make their individual choice. I will tell you, when we have our clothing boutique that my wife and I own, and we always felt like it was important when we had an in-store that we did both.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people paid with credit cards, but I will tell you, there's people who don't trust credit cards, are never going to trust credit cards, and they're only going to have cash. And so each business has to decide, well, we know that we're going to eliminate certain people by not taking cash, and maybe it's worth it to us. I don't know.
It does seem like that, and I say fraud is on the rise. It's here. And as a matter of fact, I saw a story late last night where there was a drive-through at a restaurant here in town where the person who was working in the drive-through was scanning debit cards as they came in and using them. And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh. And so they're saying now don't use drive-throughs. And I'm like, it's supposed to be safe, right? It's crazy. Info at TonyCurryRadio.net, info at TonyCurryRadio.net. You're watching and listening to Mission Minded here now on our YouTube channel. Chad, in my hometown of Westchester, Ohio, there's a lot of rural land there. We used to have cows in our backyard. The current farm bill is set to expire at the end of the month. How do farm bills affect the food banks and the repositioning of Feeding America? Does it affect you directly? I think it all affects you. Yeah, it really does. How does it?
I cannot overstate how significant the farm bill is. And myself, until I got into food banking, did not have near the appreciation for it that I should have.
What exactly is the farm bill? Let's start there.
Yeah. So the farm bill governs everything under the USDA. It covers SNAP, which is food stamps, and the whole help to farmers and commodities, just everything that food safety, all those issues. And the farm bill is negotiated every 5 years. Well, this is the 5th year. And so that's always a tug of war, because you've got the Senate and the House in different parties, the White House in different parties. So you've got that battle. And then you've got typically one party that's like, hey, I want to raise SNAP benefits. And you've got people maybe more on the Republican side that are like, hey, we have a lot of rural farmers. They tend to support, as a whole, more Republican candidates. So you again, it's all important and it's all necessary, but depending on which party you are, depending on where you're from, if you're from a rural area, you're going to be advocating for different things. So usually it comes down to everybody wants to spend a lot of money, but this side doesn't want to give kickbacks to the farmers.
Yeah.
And this side doesn't want to increase SNAP. And so you have this fight. So we've already been told, matter of fact, Mike Rogers, he's no longer in Montgomery's district. He was, but he's over the very important committee in Congress. And he came down and briefed us on the farm bill. And he said, listen, it's not going to happen in October. It's going to be part of this continuing resolution. And one of the things I didn't realize until he said it, maybe I should have, he said on a continuing resolution that basically what that does is, we always think about, they're just extending the limit, but it doesn't allow the limits to be increased. So if the continuing resolution was from a bill that was passed 2 years ago, and they just keep pushing it out, the limits can't be raised. And so it's not good, because 2 years down the road, with inflation being more, it's going to call for more money to feed our population and to do it safely and to meet that demand. But per usual, anything in Washington gets muddled by all sorts of things that don't necessarily have anything to do with farming and feeding people in need.
Very much, yeah. You're a smart man there. You may not be in politics, but you know what you're talking about. And there's a lot of can kicking in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, depending. I mean, I could talk to a Republican right now who says, I am fighting for farmers, and he or she is. And then I can turn around and talk to somebody who goes, I'm fighting for people we need greater food stamp support or greater commodities, because we get USDA shipments dispersed down through food banks. And so right now we have empty shelves that we would say, oh, I would love if we got 20 more truckloads a year from the USDA. I mean, It'd make a huge difference, but that has to come from the funding that is allocated through the Farm Bill. And they're going to kick this can down the road. Of course, they're going to end up passing it because they'll have to. But here's where it gets messy. next year is the presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
And so, then what they're probably going to do is push it out till December, and hopefully it'll get passed by then. But that's right after the election. It gets pushed back. So it's going to get kicked around. I'm hoping for at least by maybe next spring, it's going to get passed. But it affects a lot of farmers, and it affects a lot of people in need of assistance.
What is your thoughts on? I came from a rural area. My extended family, from my ex, was farmers. They used to be milk collectors and farmers. What's your thoughts on farmers? I know it's an incredibly tough, and I've got friends of mine who are farmers, and some of them do extremely well, and some of them don't do well at all. What's your thoughts on how the farmer is now, based on climate control and everything else going on with this farming bill?
Well, I have such mixed emotions when you look at it from farmers and you look at it from farming as a topic, and government support of farming. I know that farms have been reduced down to like 2% of. And by the way, I'll tell you an old joke that's one of my favorites that my dad used to tell me about. What's the true definition of mixed emotions? And it's when your daughter comes home at 2:00 in the morning with a Gideon's Bible. So anyway, I hope our audience enjoyed that for a sec. It just popped in my head. But here's why I have mixed emotions about it. When you talk to the farmer, most farmers are not wealthy. They're family farms. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to build something for the next generation. I get some farmers, and people are like, well, why are we giving kickbacks to farmers? Well, because the reality is, as we lose more and more farms, and our population continues to grow, where would we be without people growing our food?
Yeah.
To include whether it's animals, whether it's produce, whether it's nuts, it doesn't matter. Without these people doing this, that is the lifeblood, not only of us, but of what we send around the world, what we export out. It's a huge business. And so, you think, well, why are we giving subsidies to farmers? And I think, well, if we want them to be successful and every other country is giving subsidies to their farmers, then the playing field is not level. It's not fair. And we want our guys to be able to compete on an international basis. And so lifting up farmers makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is you do have some wealthy farmers who have gobbled up a lot of small farms. And then they start getting kickbacks and people start, hey, well, wait a minute, why are you giving millions of dollars? This guy's already a gajillionaire, And I get it. I those same emotions come to me, but I'm just telling you, I have such a deep appreciation. Right now, we're talking about what we're doing here. We're working with 30 African-American farmers to try to help alleviate some of the barriers. And these are people that it's just a father and a son working their farm, trying to grow produce, trying to just get to a level that they can sell to the Walmarts and the other grocery stores. But there's barriers, and we're trying to help elevate them. And so a farm bill can be those kind of things that you have people that want to do the work, have the land, but just don't have the resources. So I think the farm bill may go into farm loans and things like that, just makes more resources available for people to grow. And that everybody wins in that.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I've never seen a lazy farmer. I'm just saying, and I've never seen a lazy farmer.
Exactly. Not a successful one anyway.
I have never seen, I really have. I've never seen a lazy farmer. Finally, info at TonyCurryRadio.net. We got time for one more. Nick in South Side of Chicago mentioned that General Mills recently broke ground on a brand new factory, $12 million. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's in India for a brand new baking plant. He wants to know, what's Mike's thoughts on the U.S. businesses spending money across seas or across anywhere?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I understand why they do it. I understand, I bought into this years ago, this whole thing about back in the early 90s. I was on board because had a very capitalist, I still do. I'm a fan of capitalism in its purest form. But the idea was we were going to ship out all these jobs to Mexico. And when we did that, these were going to be the lower wage jobs, and then all the high-tech jobs would come to us. So we were going to grow this high-tech society until we found out, you know what? We have millions and millions and millions of adults who need manufacturing jobs. They're not going to ever be, and it's not an insult to them. It's either they're not interested. Some people just are not there. I don't know if I could sit down and code and all that. I mean, it's just not my forte. And so we sent all these jobs out, and NAFTA is what I was trying to think off the top of my head, NAFTA. Oh. And we were supposed to get all these high tech. And then we found out, oh, wait a minute, now there's nobody making anything in America. And so we started bringing a lot of that back and a lot of the manufacturing back. And I know from business decisions, hey, if you've got an opportunity to go out to another country and expand your company, and you're going to feed people over there and employ people over there, I got no problem with that as long as your product is over there. What I have a problem with is you saying, well, I want to make more money, so we're going to send the labor cost out, let people build it cheaper, but I'm going to bring it back to America and sell it.
Yeah.
That's where I have the biggest heartburn, because what you're saying is I'm going to take advantage of labor, the cheaper labor, rather than paying, decent American living wages or whatever. And I just don't think that's a good stand for an American company who's going to benefit from the marketplace. The more their market's going to be in America. And I'll tell you, that's, I don't want to get into Apple and all that kind of stuff, but they've been able, in my opinion, to really, some of these major companies, Nike and that, they talk about, I can't say they've got 12-year-olds making iPhones or whatever, but they talk about some of the impressive and oppressive environments that these companies do overseas. I mean, just people sitting there 12 hours a day, hardly unable to take a break,
making a couple
so
bucks
that they
a day,
can
yeah.
sell and come back and make. And just from an ethics perspective, that would violate my personal ethics to put that on other people.
Michael, great show, man. Appreciate you, and we'll look forward to doing Bite next right here on.
What great emails!
Yeah, they're great emails.
Really appreciate all of them, and I just hope they keep coming. It really helps us think about things that maybe we wouldn't otherwise address.
Keep them coming. info@TonyCurryRadio.net. This is Mission Minded.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.